hear him. I also know he's like deep in the woods.
Hey
Um,
guys, I managed to find a little sweet spot with reception here. My favorite part of the camp this year. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's gonna get through here. I'll try without. Can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
I'd say my
I
favorite
think
part
there's just a
of
huge
the.
lag, is my
Okay.
guess.
My favorite part of the camp was just the way we managed to build a community so quickly. Like just having people come together, which I think actually comes from the extremities of the circumstances that we were put under. Um, I think as far as like structures, etc., the illuminates were great for shade. Having whole area with the illuminates and shift pod, it was really weather resistant. Like I mean, I barely even had AC, but I was pretty comfortable the whole time I was there. So that was I thought that was really well done. Um, just having running water and the plumbing situation was great. The fridges, the kitchen setup, I think is fantastic. Everything we have to eat there. Yeah, I know. I think that was awesome. Yeah, that's probably my 2 cents. I'll pass it to whoever's not spoken yet since I was late. I don't know who that is.
Let's start to Lauren.
Yeah, my favorite part of the camp was probably like similar to many people, the kitchen, eating area, food. People really gather around food, and then there's like this like moment of relaxation where you're like, haha, that was something. That was something. So it's a really great opportunity for bonding. I'll pass it to Jess. Freehand? No, not working.
Might be
No.
muted. B.
Let's throw it to Danny, and Jess, you just keep interrupting us until it works.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yay! Okay, what am I doing? I'm talking about the things I like the most. You guys.
What was your favorite part of camp?
Yeah, I mean the chill dome is always a big favorite, but I gotta say, just connecting with all of you, like especially our core team, but the people that would come in to the kitchen, I really felt like our kitchen and lounge area was where people came to, and I really loved being there and greeting and answering questions and just getting to know everybody. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I enjoy the whole thing. I know it went on long and it was really hard, but building something for us to have an epic adventure in was a lot of fun, and I love doing it with you guys. And, yeah, that's what I got.
Nice. I can pass it for you. How about Mashby? You just rolled in. The opening question is, what was your favorite part of the camp this year?
Getting to know the people in the camp was the best part, right? Just seeing how we work together and the dynamics and figuring out how to get through whatever came our way. It was cool to see people adapt.
Nice. And it looks like Jess is in Josh's screen. So do you want to throw us your info, Jess? Like, what's your favorite part?
Yeah. All right. Now you can hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. I mean, my favorite part actually was the Illuminat neighborhood. I guess with the previous camps that I've been with, it's like, Jesus. The shade structures were very often like up to one person for their tent, or maybe you get two people underneath the shade structure. So I really liked this very communal thing, you know, kind of like what Oso was saying, is like we're all part of this shade structure and we got a neighborhood, I would love to see the overflow come and be part of the big structure as well. And then, kind of a side thing was I really loved making midnight pancakes and having people join in for bacon. That was awesome. I would love to do that again. All right. Passing along to, looks like we got Sturkey. Okay.
Yeah, well, I was unfortunately not able to make it and be able to hang out with all of you and experience all these great times. But I guess my favorite part is that everyone made it home. I know it was a very tough year, and there's a lot of adversity that comes with building in the hot sun and sand. And I think, yeah, you got to be thankful that, no major injuries and everyone is safe and sound. That's something that's easy to overlook, but when it happens, it's never a good thing. So yeah, the fact that everyone's able to pull together and safely have the camp, that's my favorite part.
Absolutely. Good point, Sturkey. I think everyone went, so let's just, I want to say, hey, there's an open agenda. There's a few things I want to just make sure to put out there, but for the most part, I figured you guys probably have things that you want to chat about. So you can add it in here as an agenda topic. Josh posted the link. I'll repost it for people who came in late because Google, for some reason, and I don't know, Kirko, who you got to talk to, but for some reason they don't like keep the messages,
Luckily, not my job anymore.
So if you go to the Google Doc, you can find a link to the expenses. It's still a work in progress, but make sure that if you have expenses that you want covered, make sure that they're in here. You should have comment access to this doc, so you can right click and add a comment. Also, if you're in the build channel, which I think everyone in here, maybe Mashby might not be, I'm not sure, but there's a build channel, which is now called Bettering Decentral 2023.
Oh, can I join it?
Yeah. Oh, Val, you're not in it? Okay, I'll add you. I'll add you when I'm not talking.
Okay.
And or if someone else wants to try to add Val, that's cool. But we can you can add a receipt there. And my personal assistant Jessie, who's been rolling around, you might have seen her around, she can go in and pick it up and add it to this doc. Then and it's worth noting that maybe she screwed something up. If you put some receipts in there and it's not accounted for properly, then hey, this is your chance to review and make sure that your stuff is in there. It should say paid by, and you can right click this and you can filter, you can make a copy and if you really want to play with it, but you can filter and make sure, find your name and see that all your expenses are in there. That's it. Any questions on expenses? This is the moment. Okay, cool. Oh yeah, Mitch. Oh no. There you go. Then let's keep moving. So expenses, it's a work in progress. I think it'll be done by next week. I don't think that there's any further expenses that are going to be accounted for later after this week. So that should be able to be finalized, and we'll have some final numbers to report. Also, we have some feedback forms in progress. The first one is on the speaker series. So this already exists. And if you have any feedback on the speaker series, Sarah put this together. So you can fill it out. If you went to the speaker series, if you think the form can be improved, that's also open. So far, only one person has even filled it out. So it's still early. We can change the form if you guys don't like the form. There's also 2 other forms being worked on. One is going to be on the camp in general, and it's a pretty extensive form, mostly copy paste from our forms from 2019, and it will be sent out. I'll probably DM everybody individually to encourage participation in that very long form. And then there are also
You froze.
Lost you, Griff.
oh no,
Yeah, you're back. Oh,
I'm
there you
back.
are. You're back now.
So yeah, there's going to be a feedback form on the camp and a feedback form on the campers. And so still putting this together, trying to get a picture of most of the campers and put them up there. But I'm pretty sure, at least talking with people, unless I get different understanding from the feedback form, most people want a smaller camp next year. So that likely means that we won't be able to invite everyone back. And so we're going to have like a feedback form that is open to participation. Not the results will be not shared with everyone. This is just, it's just not right to share the results with everyone, in my opinion. That way we can get fair feedback, and also it will be anonymous. So yeah, that's also in progress, and that one's almost done. Any other thoughts on the feedback forms or anything else?
Is all of the information in the bettering chat being harvested into something so that we can like analyze that and request prioritization or anything around that stuff?
That is also a work in progress, but there is progress made. Let me see if I can find that link to the spreadsheet that we have right now. It needs to be sorted a little bit better, but it is all being put into a spreadsheet because I like spreadsheets, and I seem to be the lead on these things. So yes, yeah, and most of it's already been captured. Cool. Well, any other topics that anyone wants to bring up? There's nothing else added to the agenda doc, but we're all here. It might be a good time to talk about anything you have. You know, this is like a good final chance.
Actually, today I had also my final call with those students that you helped me to like lead during that program when we had that sandstorm and I didn't have connection. And we did a final round of highs and lows. So let's share our highs and lows, both during the Burning Man or maybe what's going on in our current lives. So because we are fam now, and it's good to know what's going on in our lives. At least I'm super interested, like general highs and lows, what's going on, and etc. etc. What do you think?
Sure. Is there? Yeah, I think we can do that. Do you want to model? I don't know that I fully understand enough to lead.
Oh, just share some moment of high and some moment of low from recent days. It could be both connected with Burning Man experience and not connected.
Go for it. Take the lead.
Okay.
Show us what it looks like.
Okay. So yeah, my high was that after everything, actually the strike experience was a great decompression experience for me, because I guess apart from the fact that we helped to take everything down, it somehow helped to gradually be back to the life. So I don't know, people who intentionally miss strikes, I don't know why you are coming to Bond. And I realized that thing was it was just the right thing to do, to join the strike. I'm happy that we had it. And in general, the whole experience, this is just like I wanted it, long before. And after burn, I finally felt empowered, not in the sense of I developed some inner strength that I never had before. No, it feels like I finally owned what I had, and it feels great. And I know it's not something temporary, and it's not something that I don't know, I just developed in the recent weeks. I finally like highlighted it. Speaking about Laos, so I am a co-founder of my startup, and you can basically read anything or everything that you recall about startups. I guess somehow I can relate either now or in the past. I would be able to relate in the future, but it's also a fun story. So yeah, today, right now, we are like in a bit shaky, I guess, shaky time, but we'll pull it off.
I wanna hijack because we have limited time. Guys, what do you think about reducing our carbon footprint in the camp? Wouldn't that be fucking awesome? How we get some solar up in this bitch, right? And like dealing with the sheer amount of waste that we produce in like a more responsible way.
Yup.
Oh, Danny, you're cutting out.
Oh, I just said, yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the things that came up a lot in our bettering conversation chats. That's why I asked about it. Like, there's a lot of ideas on what we can do differently, but figuring out and prioritizing which ones we want to do, like reducing our use of fuels or the trash that we're making and ways to manage it a lot better are things I would put those as a high priority.
Yeah, and like how do we want to upgrade our infrastructure for next year? Like if we're getting in funding, like how do we get a signal on what the priority is to upgrade? A lot of people were in my bubble, we're talking about solar, because electricity was a huge problem this year.
I've done solar now since 2018 at the burn. It just comes at a very, very high cost, and if you're not using it throughout the rest of the year, it's just a huge waste, right? Because if we wanted to camp, I don't know how many kilowatts the camp has, but like thinking of all of those ACs, you're talking like easily 20, 30, 40 grand in solar to power something like that, probably more. And at that point, it's just so not cost effective unless you have a good use for it for the rest of the year. But then
I don't want to say it, but that's less than 10% of what was spent on the art car. So, and we'll probably use the art car. Well, right now we'll say the art car might get used as much as our solar.
true, but they're very different comparable things. There's nothing else where you could just buy a generator instead, right?
True that. But I guess it's like signaling, do we want to get off the generator and like sort of thing, or do we want to just move to solar and like be more of an example to other camps?
I think
Things like
the
this.
first thing we need to ask is about reducing, like rather than finding how do we power 10 billion ACs and all these other things, what can we remove that is unnecessary or the most wasteful? What is the low-hanging fruit that can reduce our power needs so much that either solar becomes effective or using a generator isn't terribly environmentally damaging because we're not powering so much? That would be my first question to resolve before we figure out how do we power the things. What do we actually need to power as a camp?
Okay.
Yeah, and that I was gonna say something very similar, where it doesn't necessarily have to be all solar or all generator. I mean, even putting up a handful of panels and using a little bit less of the generator is a big deal. And then doing the same thing the following year and the year after. Who knows? Maybe one day there's only an emergency generator.
Yeah. Like even starting small and running the kitchen off of solar,
Yeah. I like that idea a lot, finding a way to gradually work into it, seeing what works well, what doesn't, because rather than like our camp, we are all big thinkers and dreamers and builders, and we like to go balls to the wall with everything, but we don't like to test the minimal viable product before we go all out. And sometimes that's great if the investment pays off, but if it doesn't pay off really big. And so I think this slow, gradual shift toward renewables or toward solar on some of our things, maybe it's just our lighting the first year, the next year maybe it's the kitchen plus lighting, etc., and we eventually work up to doing more and more, finding what systems work and which ones don't along the way.
Mm-hmm.
One
Mhm.
one of the easiest MVPs would be the swamp coolers, like the big ones, because we wouldn't need a battery, we wouldn't need anything, and also they're really annoying because they're usually not close to other high voltage. Like they don't feel like part of the grid. Like there's often like a lot of ACs or a lot of cooling things near each other, but then there's the chiller over here that's taking 10 amps, and another one that's over there taking 10 amps. And we could avoid batteries and everything, and it's just one of these things where it turns on when there's sun and it turns off when there's not, because and this was actually discussed this year already with Camp Contact, and so we could try to push that for the village swamp coolers, make
Yeah.
one repeatable system, which I think
Yeah.
already designs.
I wouldn't
Yeah,
dismiss the
the other
possibility of
angle is, like-
turbines for night generation as well.
Go ahead, Mashpee.
So night generation with a turbine or with multiple turbines potentially gives you an option to charge a battery bank or power devices at night as well. That's what I was playing with this year a little bit.
Mm.
Can we have somebody do the napkin math if it's actually better? Because I'm slightly doubtful on it. Because once you factor all of the, I think if we had a solar system somewhere sitting that we could just turn down for the burn, bring over, and then run, I think that'd actually be a really good thing. But I think if we end up purchasing a system, it might never actually be a better environmental thing to do. It's a gut feeling. I don't know, but somebody should actually like sit down and do the math on that one. Because
Yeah.
we might be super well intentioned. We spend all of that energy and we're actually making it worse rather than better.
I bet Rye could give us a good quote on that.
I think once we have a system that runs all year, we don't have to have that discussion because we know over the years it actually does some good, right? And it's just the transportation cost, and then it's probably more weight and more volume than a generator, but not that much more. So you're probably good there. But yeah, that was my thought.
Mm-hmm. I also wanted to talk about the epic fail of trash. What, Danny? There was like 4,000 pounds of trash that went out. 5,000 pounds.
It was nuts.
Jesus.
What was all of that? Holy cow!
Carpet.
I think a lot of it actually wasn't ours. We had probably the biggest epic fail, I would say, is I would just throwing it out there. I think like probably 1,000 pounds at least wasn't ours, and it was other camps that saw this big orange trash fence that was very clear and out in the open, especially when they're leaving on Tuesday and Wednesday, and they're just like, oh, look at this. Especially some of them were so nasty. And it was like, oh, this is the bag someone didn't want to take home. And I'd open some of them and they didn't look like ours, you know? They didn't look like Naked Hearts too. I think we were blaming Naked Heart a lot. And yes, for the cardboard, but that was there was kind of an initial deal that we would burn all the cardboard for the village at the end. And we just, we had challenges there. So the cardboard, I think, was other camps, but was Naked Heart and some Camp Contact. But but I think there was a lot of garbage that came from just us having too open of a trash corral.
My feeling around this is our camp's purpose and bringing people into Burning Man that haven't been there, having more stringent guidelines that adhere to the principles and actually teach the Burning Man principles would be really beneficial. I know I saw a lot of people that came to camp bringing like a lot of stuff in new packaging and things like that, and bringing a lot of the things that they needed. If each, it's great that we have a camp trash for everybody in the camp, but there isn't any like contribution by everybody to managing that. It fell on a very few people. If individuals are taking responsibility for all of their own trash and anything that's coming in and taking at least that with them, I really think that would reduce it a lot. If we were able to minimize the camp trash down to just the kitchen, for example.
Actually, it sounds like a point for a checklist that maybe every new camp member and every person who joins the camp should read and commit to do. Like, don't bring new stuff in packages and pack it at home. And maybe we shall do that checklist and make sure that everybody would have it and live up to it.
I think there's also the part of when people know. So what we did over for the timers that came with us with the art car, we just very clearly told them everything you bring back yourself, right? This is not camp trash. Like, some of the stuff you have at food waste at camp, sure. But if you're bringing a box of something, you're hauling a box of something back. And I don't know, correct me, Michael, but we had like 3 or 4 bags of trash, right? It wasn't much at all. Produced over there.
You pack it in, you pack it out. That was the mindset.
Like, we had no expectation that somebody else would take care of our trash, right?
Yeah. I did notice, like, because we asked people to bring stuff for us, for example, that generated a lot of trash. Things that were brought to the camp came in excessive packaging and things like that, and in bags, and we had to manage that.
Well, Mitch, you have more on this topic?
No, I know it was a problem, so I just maybe giving people a space to figure it out and realizing it's a problem we have to fix for next year.
It'd be nice to set some sort of goals or measure. Oops, sorry.
Go ahead.
It just feels like this is something we could like set a goal for ourselves, right? Like, what do we think is a reasonable amount of trash? How do we try to hit that and see how much trash we're actually generating, instead of all of a sudden, holy shit, look at how much we have.
Yeah, I think a good place to start with that is, I mean, those of us who saw the trash, primarily Griff and Lauren, and then I helped out with some of that, and Freehand was there as well at the actual dump, kind of taking an accounting before we forget what was the primary composition of all the trash, so we know where our biggest waste points were and where we need to spend the most time reducing.
I have photos.
Yeah, Jess took a lot of documentation of that process. I mean, one of the big things was we did get rid of a bunch of old carpeting and old squish. So those things were heavy. They were full of playa. And so to me, that partly implies that perhaps we should be thinking a little more thoroughly about what we're actually using for our flooring and squish. Can we get away with just having tarps? Can we get away with just having, sheets that fold up much smaller than an enormous heavy carpeting? As just one simple example of looking at what we threw away, how can we improve it for the future? But obviously extrapolating that across everything that we tossed.
Yeah. So the 18 bags, contractor sacks of stuff that I was able to get Valley Village to take without laundering it. The thing that became really clear is, for years we've been bringing stuff to the burn and putting it into bags and saving it, and then bringing more the next year and bringing more the next year. So this was a cleanup year. Like that was really clear to me, especially in doing all that laundry and touching all the things to see what we have. We were cleaning out, several years worth of accumulation. So that is a factor in how much of that trash we had and how much work we had post-strike as well.
Yeah. So I guess one question there, or two questions. One is, do we do this sort of cleanup every year? And the second question is, can we eliminate things so that we have less to clean up in the first place? Where can we change how we bring flooring and squish as one big example, since that's the topic at hand? What can we do differently that still provides a fun, squishy, comfortable environment, but maybe doesn't require us to fill an entire U-Haul up full of things at the end of every year?
Yeah, this is something I gave a lot of thought to as I was doing that, and thought, in preparation for 2023, it would be nice to know actually how many square feet of flooring do we need? How many beds are we putting into each dome space and providing for how many campers? How many sheets and blankets do we actually need? Because in my opinion, we transported 2/3 more than we actually used. which meant handling it multiple times. Things we were opening bags that were laundered and brought there and then sat there and then brought back. And because they were opened and dusty, they needed to actually be laundered again. So there was an excessive amount of extra energy expended caring for things that didn't actually get used.
So that sounds to me like something we should be addressing earlier on in the process for the following year. So getting our list of campers much earlier, getting our list of people that are going to be in tents for shift pods versus whatever other structure earlier on. Does that sound right? If we have numbers earlier, we can account for that before we're in the rush to get down there?
I mean, yes, and this is why we had this situation, because traditionally that's not really been possible. We don't actually know who all's coming until very late. They don't fill out the forms until very late. So we haven't had that information. But if we were to actually set a plan and a max and say, okay, this is what we have the capacity for based on what kind of materials we want to transport and use, then we kind of get to flip that around, right? Where instead of waiting to find out who and how many, we know how much our infrastructure can accommodate and how much our team can accommodate.
Very nice. Yeah. So speaking of that, that if we want to keep talking about this, I'm into it. But I wanted to do a super quick overview of just potential core structure and how that might look next year. I've had some personal ideas that I can throw out, and then obviously everything is open for discussion. But my idea or goal would be, if we are reducing the number of people, simplifying and minimizing our infrastructure to see what we can, basically what's the minimum amount of stuff we can bring and still have the core experience. And I'll just throw out my quick idea, and then we can obviously discuss from there. My thought on total housing would be 3 Illuminate structures, no tent overflow whatsoever. Hopefully there'd be enough room in one of the Illuminates to put a single carport, much like Camp Contact did this year, that could be decorated beautifully, have a swamp cooler running to it, have squish inside of it, beautiful lighting, and it would essentially be a small down camp only version of a chill dome. And for 1 year, we forego building a chill dome. I know people love it, but we would have our own small, beautiful chill space just for our camp that wouldn't be overrun by normies and people from other outside camps that we have to accommodate. And we could decorate it very nicely. The kitchen and commons area, we seem to really like how that's built. So that seems like an area that we could maybe leave as is for the coming year, because we already know that system really well and we already know how to set that up really well. But spending more time on deco and on lighting so that it becomes an even more comfortable space. Focusing on the fishbowl as our only stage that we worry about, and cutting the main stage completely. Now, I know we'd have to discuss that with Contact and Naked Heart, because they use that for some of their talks and workshops. But I would love to see, if we're a smaller camp, if we can tell them we just don't have the ability to build the whole main stage. That way we only have one stage that we use for all of our talks, instead of people being distributed to different stages and not knowing which one to go to. We can focus all of our efforts on beautifying that one space and drastically minimize the amount of flooring and squish we have to do. So we'd only need flooring and squish for the fishbowl, our tiny carport inside of the Illuminate structure for our personal chill space, and the commons area at the kitchen. And that would be all of our main infrastructure, other than things like the plumbing and electrical. So it drastically reduce the amount of infrastructure we build. And it would give us more personal space than we've actually had before that's just for us. And it would eliminate a lot of electrical and squish needs.
Josh, do you have any idea on how many hours go into each of those structures? That we at least have like a rough, like, how this is how long it takes to set up, this is how long it takes to break down. Could that be super interesting to put next to this too?
Yeah, very, very rough. I was only the lead on the Illuminates, so those are the only ones that I really know well. but those ones with a solid crew of 4 people, we got to the point that we could set one up in about 4 or 5 hours. So we could theoretically have all the Illuminate structures up by Tuesday night. So I don't know where I wrote it down. I actually had a list of like day by day what could be built. But
does that include the floor, like starting with dust and ending with complete structure, or is there like?
Assuming that all the parts are accessible, yeah, the very last one where we set up the main stage, that was just me, Reiner, and Acorn. Wasabi was there sort of as like a helper, but she didn't honestly do much. It was basically 3 of us. And with the exception of the pole lift, we did the entire structure in about 5 hours. So with a good crew, that's totally possible. Now that's assuming the weather is good. And that's assuming we get a bunch of people to come over for the pole lift because we need help with that part of it. But we've got those structures down and all of the components are now pre-built. All the cables are built. All the walls have the hooks in them already. So since things are already mise en place, it's very easy to construct those guys now.
I really appreciate hearing you reflect that getting to deco and lighting and making that a priority. I would really love to see us have a little more spaciousness to make the spaces that we have go to a more elevated aesthetic. We never really got to put out all those colored lights and things that actually make it feel great at night. And yeah, as I went through all of our materials, I'm like, wow, we have the stuff to make a place really, really beautiful if we're not racing to just get it built and then we don't actually have the time I mean, doing good decor takes some time. I would love to have the spaciousness to climb up on ladders and attach fabrics and shine lights on them that make a space feel really special and warm.
100%. That's something at the local regional burn Critical Northwest that this year, one of my favorite camps was just a single 10 by 20 foot carport, but they just decorated the inside of it so beautifully with amazing neon colors and black lights. And it was the most simple camp and the most elegant and the most enjoyable space to be in just because they did one thing incredibly well. And they didn't try to make it huge or outlandish in any way. It was simple, but just done incredibly well and beautiful. And I think that our camp deserves that. We're very utilitarian, and it would be nice to feel just amazing being inside of our camp every space. Even those colorful lights that people put up to shine on the Illuminate made it feel 10 times better in there. So really leaning into that, having an entire day where the whole camp works together on deco and lighting would feel really, really good. I'd rather have beautiful lighting and beautiful squish and beautiful colored tapestries than another structure that only a small percentage of our camp uses, because that's another structure we have to tear down too. That's one thing I think we sometimes forget when building and getting excited about building things, is that means that's one more structure that strike team now has to tear down. And so if you're not going to be there to strike it, don't get excited about building it.
Another thought along those lines is that we do a lot of stuff that requires a lot of work building there. And naturally, when you're building an art car, you're not building there, you're building somewhere with like proper tools, not in harsh weather and stuff like that. So the other question in my head was, would there be some stuff that we could actually prep, right? And it could be as simple as dumb as saying, hey, we're building a shower on a trailer and we just tow the trailer out there, right? And we could still use the trailer for storage, but it has this other thing to it. I don't know which other things would be among that list, but you could build an entire kitchen just on a trailer and then you just fold out and add a couple of carports and you're done much, much quicker than we are today. I don't know if that's something that people would be interested in talking about or doing long term, but that's something that always came up for me.
Yeah, I think that'd be another area, kind of like we talked about solar. Maybe this is an area where we try one thing. We say this year our shower will be on a trailer. That'll be the one thing we try. Or maybe our trash all just sits on a trailer, so it doesn't have to ever be picked up, rebagged, thrown away. It's all just, you just put the lid on it and the whole thing just goes to the dump without even closing it or without even working on it. So picking a thing and trying that, because like I know that Jesse and Highlander both were putting a bunch of links to things in our chat for a while of things like that. And I was surprised at how not crazy expensive they were and how nicely self-contained a lot of those sorts of units are. Especially if you're getting military surplus, because they, I mean, a military can set up a camp for 1,000 troops in 10 minutes. Like, they're just precision, and their pieces are all like that. They're all fold out, function, fold up, take off. And it'd be great, I think, to start moving some of our infrastructure to modular like that.
I mean, one of the simple things could be we could just park the art car in DECENTRAL, right, and just run the shower. That is something we wanted to do. We just did not have the resources nor time to pull it off this year.
And the plan had to change at the end after the NFT sale got kabooshed, and it was like, oh no, you have this plot of land, you have to use it. And like the plan was kind of to have you guys camp with us as well as have the shower sitting there most of the time, and that just,
and like we were running it for most of the day, so you could take a shower, and it was always running for a couple of hours, but we just did not have enough people from camp coming over to actually do that.
Yeah, maybe if we don't have the stage space, then the village would reconsider being able to have the car in there.
The other was immensely difficult for the car was propane. Like, we went through an immense amount of propane every day, and it takes forever to get propane at the burn. It meant 2 people spent a day getting propane every other day, and that's just not sustainable. We need to find some way of getting propane deliveries at the burn if we want to burn through, like the car just needs that much propane. There's no other way for us. The problem is there is no propane deliveries if we're not on Esplanade. So like, we can try, like what I've tried to do now is I've reached out to a bunch of friends that are on Esplanade just saying, would you be willing to do propane deliveries for us? And when we run out at night, we just stop there quickly and we load on tanks. That could be one way of solving it, but that was one of the big tasks we had not accounted for, and just losing 2 people every other day doing nothing else and getting propane was pretty terrible. And it was only possible because we had a disability vehicle. Otherwise, we would have been completely fucked.
What percentage of the propane is used for which portions of the car? Like, running the actual car, heating the water for the sauna, the poofers, etc.
We don't fully know yet, but Michael, this is where you can jump in a little bit. So my estimate is like you're going through like 2 to 3 of the big cylinders a night, and that 2 to 3 depends on how much are you poofing. But we never had a night where we wouldn't freeze up the tanks at the end of the night. So even if we're running on like 4 tanks, eventually the car had to return just because our tanks were solidly frozen. So for next year, what we will have to do is actually build a water bath that's warmed, that the tanks are sitting in, so we can actually get the full amount out of them. And we probably have to return to camp in the middle of the night if we actually want to run the poofers fully. Like, we're going to go through like 6, 7 tanks a night to run that thing.
Ideal state this year was a distribution of 4 tanks on the manifold, and it would operate until the tanks were down to about 1/3 left. And then you would catch 1 primary tank that would freeze up, and we would try to put a water bath around 1, so there would constantly be at least 1 that was warmed. And then the other 2 could freeze up, and the 3rd could actually continue on, and the 4th potentially was turned on if necessary. But 4 tanks was probably the best configuration we had. We ran for a few nights at 3, and then we froze up here and there.
There is a topic that's been sitting on the agenda for a little bit. I want to make sure it has time because we only have 8 minutes left. So I think, Mitch, you added this, the improving, sorry to just cut that conversation, but improving the sign-up process for arriving campers.
Yeah, so that was a big frustration. People not signing up for the full amount of shifts. Basically, every kitchen shift, there would be somebody that would not show up, at least one, and having no idea who people are. Like, they write down their playa name or some other name, and I'm like, who the hell is this? Like, so we had a nice thing in 2019 where we had photos of all the campers and their names. Camp Contact actually like made magnets of all the campers with their faces on it on playa, and it was like worked out super great. And the last point is like, what are the repercussions and how are we tracking people who didn't contribute?
Freehand asks, are we a DAO yet?
Yeah. We kind of are, because we have these NFTs, although I think we need to re-mint the NFTs because they because of problems. But there is on this topic, I think that there's a lot that could be improved for sure. What file is in owner's trash? Okay. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. But sorry, I got very distracted there. But people, there is no real repercussion for people not doing their shifts, other than we took pictures of who signed up for shifts. And there was like an idea of having people sign up when they've actually done their shifts. In 2019, we had this nice wristband thing that you got a wristband, and then you would hand off your wristband to the next person who would take your shift, so that there was some accountability there. And that was developed by Alexi. I think this it kind of falls under the not having enough people who camped with us before to take leadership. This is like, we had Hamster who had done orientation and was a burner, but she hadn't camped with us before. So she didn't know our dynamic, you know? And this is the same for the garbage and for a lot of the things we had problems with. We didn't have someone who had camped with us before or who had built with us before take leadership and ownership of that, and definitely not soon enough to build a system. And so I think next year, we just got to build a completely new system for how we do shifts. I would even say that people get drafted as opposed to signing up for things. And we can do, get people's like understanding of like what they're into, but be like, okay, well, we need this many kitchen shifts, so we're drafting this many kitchen people. It's not one of these things where, oh, no one wanted to do the trash, so it just doesn't get done because no one put their name in there. And also having stronger leadership, so it doesn't all fall in an orientation person to know everything, but having like leadership that manages different pieces of the puzzle.
The way we do it at our regional Burning Man camp is we have day teams. So you pick a day, and then that day you are just at camp most of the day and you're doing all the things. So you might have 10 people on the Monday day team. They're just there. They do all the cooking, they do all the cleaning, they do all the trash, they do all the fixing of whatever random little shit comes up. They handle all of it. That way people aren't forgetting shifts, because you knew it was your day, you're there that day. If you weren't there that day, you don't get your deposit back. It's super simple. We don't have to track anybody down. You don't have to pass off a bracelet to somebody who's on a bunch of drugs in deep playa. It's just, here's your day. You signed up for it ahead of time. If you didn't get the day you want, sign up earlier next year. And that worked really, really well at the regional burn. It eliminated almost all of these problems outright.
And they still do it at their burner camp as well.
Oh, on playa they do it as well. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in support of that. I think it makes it really easy when people are signing up. A, provide a picture of yourself that we can use to print out, and B, select your day of service.
Yeah, what was incredibly hard for us on the art car is that we had nobody breaking down with us. It was just the 6 core people doing it for like 2.5, almost 3 days, right? We had people saying, "Yep, we'll come over and help," and then one person showed up instead of 6 people. It made our strike incredibly hard. And I think, so what I've done is I've what Michael was saying, I've reached out to a few people running art cars and how they handle those kinds of situations. They literally do deposits for those kinds of situations. They do pretty hefty deposits too, so that people actually don't skip. Because it puts, like, it took us till like Tuesday to be back in San Francisco, even though we were like so hard on planning to get out in time, right? It's just like we were utterly surprised with the amount of work we had to do to make it work. Like everybody on that team like went really, really hard to make the car possible. And it was hard to see how like that communication barrier of how much support we actually needed to make it happen was just not happening.
I think the biggest part for me to take away from that is that I have a better understanding of what it takes to actually do the work that we need. We didn't necessarily have that previously. So now we have a very good idea of what it takes, and we can, when people don't come and we ask for help, I get that. I don't know what I have to do. Why would I go? I don't know what I'm going to be doing, or I have other things that I need to do that take priority. Totally get that. When we start giving people, hey, this is what we need you for and how long we need you to do it, that gives a little more perspective and potentially an idea that volunteers know what they're getting themselves into, right? We don't want somebody to come over who's got a fear of heights and suddenly we're like, get up on that ladder. That wouldn't be cool. So it's a better understanding at very least that we have because of this year.
Yeah, I think for us, what we discussed like is twofold. We need to do some engineering here to make it easy to build the damn thing, because we can't be spending that amount of resources every year. It's just too much. And then there's also, we need to clear the work beforehand. And if we can't get the critical number of people together, it can't come, right? It can't be a last-ditch effort every evening to rally the troops to make it happen. And then at the end, it's a few core people that just work the entire burn rather than actually enjoying themselves at all. So I think there's a lot more communication that needs to come from our side.
So
yeah, and I think that's the case with DECENTRAL as well. We have to clear the work beforehand, and then if we don't get the support, then we don't have it. I think that's probably the biggest lesson learned this burn. But we're out of time in this call. This whole window is going to close on all of us in like 30 seconds or something. Is there any? I heard I had to interrupt someone. Did you want to take the last word on this call, and then I'll say goodbye? I don't know who I interrupted.